So let me share my screen also because I think that I also want to start with this. Well, first and foremost, for those of you watching on recording, I want to start with the very first item of business. And that item of business is this. We are going to be doing The Go-Giver for October. I put a lot of thought into this. This was a book that was written several years ago, and I didn't get a chance to reread it in recent years, and I want to start doing that. So if you want to get ahead of it, every single month that we do this, I will be featuring first and foremost a link to the following month's book. So the very first time that we sit down together talking about any of our books, we are going to be announcing what the following months is. So for October 2023, we will be doing The Go-Giver by Bob Berg and John David Mann. It's not a long read. That's what I like about it, especially when we're coming into those longer dog days of fall, going into winter. Don't have too much to read there. And the other thing I'm going to say is this, please feel free to ask any questions. I do have some people live with me in the room, so we will be participating here. And if you can't hear anything, what we'll be able to do is this, I will repeat anything, I'll repeat the questions. And let's get started on our book right now that we were talking about. And here's what I'm going to tell you. Most of the people, obviously, in my sphere are going to be in the real estate industry. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is going to be about my reflections on this book and how it pertains to real estate. But feel free, if you're thinking about different industries or different things that you do on a professional basis, personal basis, whatever the case may be, where you have to position yourself or your product as a solution for someone, what have you thought about as far as how to retrain yourself? Because I'm going to tell you this, with this book, something that I did that I didn't anticipate I was going to be doing as much as I ended up doing. I usually sit down and I read a book and I actually just get through it really quickly. I just consume it and I'm just basically eat it up. With this book, I found that there were a lot of moments where I was profoundly hit with, I need to take a step back and actually think about how I'm positioning my business, my services, and how I could change how I position my business and my services. So there was times in this book where he would point something out and I would put the book down and say, I got a little bit that I need to go through. So here's the thing, like I said, in the link, in the description below, also if you're watching on the recording on YouTube, I will have links to my notes for this first section. And I'm going to start with this first and foremost. Who had, and as I said, I have people in the room too, so we will be, taking some questions here. Who really found that the whole entire framing of the story was really interesting? I know for me, I found that how he explained the entire journey that everyone goes through as a consumer, as a just stories when you're looking at movies and different things. I see, Cheryl, I see that you put your hand up. Yeah, absolutely. It's a situation where 110%, I think that this was something that was something I found to be really impactful for me, because I never thought of what made a story good. I have Nikita here nodding his head. What do you think? I mean, is this something that,
It's one of those things that when you're in the moment, you don't really think about the general picture of it, but it's absolutely true. Like every movie, every plot, they have something that sucks you in, like to get your attention without you even realizing.
There's that formula. And what I found really interesting in this was that, like, the first sections of the book really set up the mindset that you need to have to really kind of dive into each and every section. So right now, the portion that we're going to be covering is basically going up to, but not through chapter 8. So basically everything that was through the plan stage. So like I said, I think that messaging really made a big impact on me. And I want to move away from that, though, and I want to start talking about a couple of the different aspects of the story brand, building a story brand, that whole entire concept that they had about repositioning yourself in your client's eyes. a lot of times too, and as I said, I speak about this from a real estate perspective because, again, that's my audience. That's the people that I'm going to be having in the room with me on the calls. So one thing that I took a step back with in my own business was I thought about how centered around ourselves we are as the hero of the story, okay, as the hero of the story. And it's a situation where I thought about all the advertising that people do and all of that, um, like flyers that we put out there under contract. It's a picture of the agent, it's a picture of the house. We're positioning themselves as the hero of the story when in reality it's a situation where it's really that customer, that client who was the one that really is the hero. We simply were the guide. We're the Yoda, not the Luke Skywalker, if you're a Star Wars fan. So, Cheryl, you wanted to ask a question or give some input, and you wanted to do so with your voice. So I'm going to allow you to talk. Just make sure you're connected via audio, and you should have the ability to talk now. So if you just unmute yourself, you could go ahead and give a good old shout there. So just waiting on you to unmute yourself because that's something that I can't do.
Hello.
Hello, Cheryl. How
Hi,
are you today?
Sue. I thoroughly am enjoying the book. And what I'm finding, I did, I had to set the book down and reflect. And so far, I feel like I've been the guide that, everything that this gentleman is saying, it's me.
Yeah. Yeah. And so let me ask you this, Cheryl. Are you rethinking some of your branding and some of your messaging that you have? Like I said, I'm trying to right now think about ways that I could position the client as a hero. Like I have so many things where I'm talking about the house, the house, the house. I just sold a house and it's a picture of the house. But what could I do to maybe have a clear message where I'm actually positioning that, hey, this house I sold, it wasn't about the house, it was about the buyer and positioning them as the hero. I'm trying to think of different ways that I could do that. So I'm just curious as to what your thoughts are on that. You might not have them right.
I don't at the moment, but I'm giving it some deep thought, something that I've never, ever, thought before.
And what I'm going to say is this, keep that in mind for the next Zoom call because what I'm going to do is this. I think I'm going to come back to that because when I complete everything, I think I'm really going to see if I could challenge myself to come up with some different and unique marketing that's going to have my message be really clear and position myself as the guide for my client who is the hero. It's about them. It's not about me. So I love that, Cheryl, and I appreciate that that you like the book that we chose, and I hope that next month you like that one too. But let me ask you this while I have you unmuted. Is there anything else that you would like to add about this first section of the book, the first half?
Nothing more than I'm a non-reader, and for me to read a book and be involved in it, wow.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Wow.
So guess what? I mean, here's what I'm going to tell you. We have many more coming. So I'm gonna mute you now. But if you do have any more questions, feel free to go ahead and ask to be unmuted, and I have no problem doing that. So one of the things that I actually really like that. So going through this whole entire thing, as I've said, you will have my notes, so you will have a more in-depth version of what my thoughts are as far as everything is concerned. Because I do take notes as I'm reading, and it's something that you should too. You should indent pages, you should mark them up. These books are meant to be, if you're doing the hard copy, that's why I like the hard copy versus like an Audible, because I can do stuff like that. One of the things that stood out to me too was on page 24 when we were talking about the Grunt Test, because I'm trying to think of how unclear our business is in real estate as far as our messaging to our clients. And the Grunt Test, really, it was funny because I was reading it, and at first, before he even explained what the Grunt Test was, I was like, what is this? And he said basically in the book, could a caveman look at your website and immediately grunt what you offer? Okay, so he gave an example. Imagine a guy wearing a bearskin t-shirt, sitting in a cave by a fire, with a laptop across his lap. He's looking at your website. Would he be able to grunt the answer to these three questions posed above? If you were an aspiring company, would he be able to grunt, You sell headache and aspirin company. Would you sell headache medicine? Me feel better fast. Me get it at Walgreens. If not, you're likely losing sales. And I sat there and I was like, oh my God, how many times do we complicate our message with throwing out unnecessary information? The other thing, too, there was a story in the book that he pointed out about the painting company. Nikita, do you remember that story about the painting company?
Was it the one that it looked like they were selling something completely irrelevant, and the website was like overly complicated? It's just like at a first glance, they had like some artwork and things like that. They're like, what is this?
I think that really, what was funny was the industrial painting company was they offered like 27 different services, right?
Yeah,
And so basically what happened was this. In essence, what they actually did was complicated. But did the client really care about the 27 different things and all that stuff? No, they just wanted their stuff painted. Okay. So what happened was he rebranded their website. And if you recall, he went to the employees and said, hey, do you think your website would look better if we just had someone in a lab coat that was painting something and said, we paint shit? So what happens is this. It's really about, I really challenged myself to really think about the clarity of the message. And I want you, as you're going into the remainder of the book, to keep that in mind too. So in the first half, we also talked about, so I don't know if you recall, but you could also go to Story Brand Script. I think it was the website was brandscript.com, and I'll include it in a later email too, so that you could create your own framework, your own story brand framework, because I'm doing that. I'm doing that for a lot of aspects of my life. And I think that honestly, if I could compel you to do one thing with all this, it would be to 100% go ahead and start building that out for any service that you're having. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the, basically having a problem, because this was something that it really stuck with me, this chapter. So this is chapter 5 in the book. And the one thing that I pointed out in this chapter was, and he even says it on page 58, it bears repeating. The more we talk about the problems our customers experience, the more interest they will have in our brand. Their pain is the key. So in real estate, the reason why they are moving, that future promise, right? That future promise of what I'm going to look like if and when I accomplish this, when I sell my home, when I move into a new home, that pain is the reason why you are there to help them. That is the reason why you are there to work with them, to get them to where they need to be. So as they're struggling through this, right, it's all about learning to basically, if you were Yoda and Luke Skywalker was your client, it's about teaching Luke to fight through this and learn how to properly wield the Force, right? That's what it's about. But here's the thing, the pain in the problem is key. And I think that a lot of times we don't do that in real estate. So like, I will tell you one of the things that I'm really focusing a lot, especially with buyer agents, I'm focusing a lot on what has changed in your life to get you to where you are right now, where you are sitting down with me at a coffee shop to be able to basically say, hey, look, I want to start my journey. I want to buy a home. I want to sell my home. What has gotten you there? What is that change in life? And I think that reminding our clients about what that pain is, I think that's something that is really going to help us, especially in the coming months and years. If a buyer is going out to see homes when interest rates are the highest that they've been in the last 15 years, okay, inventory is the lowest, what is it that's changed in their life to make them do that? I think that identifying the problem and talking about their pain is something we really need to do. So I'm going to throw it out to the virtual peanut gallery and also Nikita, who I have live here with me. What are your thoughts on that? And that's like I said, I'm talking about chapter 5. We're identifying the problem. What are your thoughts on, you know, like I said, that what my interpretation is of it and what you took away from
I mean, looking back at it, no client has just woke up one day and said, you know what, I need to buy a house just for the fun of it. A lot of it is financial pressure, upsizing or downsizing your family, job relocation. Like looking back at each smooth transaction that I had in the past, there was a very big pain point. And honestly speaking, looking back at it, knowing that pain point made the transaction as smooth as it was.
Yeah, the pain is really it's what's compelling, and also too having, setting yourself as self up as a guide to help them to solve the problem is something that, that really stuck with me because a lot of times in real estate and in my career, I thought I was the hero. I thought I was the one that was taking it to the finish line. I am the one that's doing that. But here's the thing, and I express it a lot, especially with talking about real estate. Here it is. If you look at real estate agents across the country, it will be their picture, a picture of the home, but that shouldn't be the focus. It should be what happened here. What is the journey that these buyers took? So what's more impactful for you? Okay, imagine this. Imagine that you are a buyer in real estate, right? And you're trying to choose an agent, okay? And you see that Stu sold 123 Main Street for $700,000, or Stu has 123 Main Street under contract. What if, with your permission, you took pictures of your buyers throughout the process and you said, Bobby and Sally were renting in Jersey City and they just had a baby, and we got them into an awesome home at the Jersey Shore. Another family served by redfin.com, by RBR Realty. Imagine a flyer instead of you posting that picture of that house, because no one cares about the house. But here's the thing, the journey, yeah, they care about that. Think about it. If you had no context, right? If you had no context in any story and you just see Katniss won a competition, well, what does that mean to you? Think about it. Listen, the story of Hunger Games, Katniss won a contest. The end. Guess what? When you post the flyer that says house sold, it's the same thing. Without the context of the journey and the problem that you identified and who the hero was, that message means nothing. And I want that to sit with you because that's really what I'm thinking about right now, as far as from a marketing perspective, from being able to position myself and to be able to solve their problems. So they talk about, basically the different levels of problems that you would have. And that's really kind of pointed out in before it was the process plan. It's basically, let me see, I think it's before me to guide. So they have a problem. So the problems are going to really start on.
I don't know if that's the section with the river they were talking about with the waterfall, but that was a really good analogy.
Which one was that? The waterfall one. Give that to me because
I maybe I read a little bit past the section, but you were speaking on the journey, and he refers to an analogy. Imagine your client standing in front of like a very fast moving river. To the right of them, they see a waterfall, and realistically speaking, if they just walk into that river, they're probably going to get taken away by the current. You're there to provide stepping stones for them to cross.
I'll tell you exactly where that is, where we're setting the stones. That's in the next section. That's in the has a plan. So what happens is this, I'm right now, so just to kind of keep everything kind of on on pace, is basically I'm talking about identifying that problem, talking about that problem. And what is that deeper meaning? Because here's the thing, they talked about a couple of different problems. They talked about the internal, the external, and the philosophical problems. And here's the thing, they're looking to solve, and this was something that really stuck with me as far as this section was concerned. They're looking to solve the external problem, but really the internal problem, the internal struggle that is really what drives it, right? That's really the situation where it changes it from a compelling story to a nothing burger, right? Like basically, and he uses Jason Bourne as a situation there where he says, "Well, guess what? How compelling would it be if Jason Bourne just basically was able to solve the problem all by themselves? And it was just an existential problem. That's not interesting. That's not an interesting story. And also, too, in that situation, you don't need a guide. You don't need a plan. Like Nikita was saying, the plan is important, and being able to identify the problem. I think that's so important. And as I said, I think it's important for us to also identify if it is an external, internal, philosophical problem. So, what I challenge you also to do, as I have been with coming up with a couple of things as far as what kind of different marketing would you do as far as a real estate agent, and also too, if you are listening from a different industry, I'd be really curious about how you use and applied some of these philosophies, some of these models to your business. So, like I said, you can comment down below. I am going to have this recording on my YouTube channel. But the other thing that I want to talk about is basically meeting the guide. I mean, this is who we are. And I think that this was when I realized that being the guide was a great thing in identifying my role in this. That really helps you really kind of understand. I I mean, it changed my whole philosophy. There's a lot of things that I'm doing now that I'm writing down in my journal to kind of future proof my business so that I make sure that my messaging is around how I am the right guide for them. And I'm also asking the question of, uh, is my messaging clear? You know, because here's the thing, and he mentions this on page 77. He says the guide simply plays a role. The story must always be focused on the hero, and if a storyteller or business leader forgets this, the audience will get confused about who the story really is about and they will lose interest. Think about this, and I'm going to relate it back to those um those think posts that people put out there, the postcards. Okay, like how many of you really care that one of your agent friends sold a house? Unless it is relevant to you, how many of you actually care about that? How many of your buyers said, "Oh man, I saw that post that you put where you put it under contract. I had to call you." No one, right? So guess what happened? The story was about the guy, and what happened was this: the person in the audience lose interest. Like, how impactful would it be if you actually had so like have you ever watched something and I will tell you I'm a big fan of this. Have you ever watched something and you were hearing the story and you were hearing what was going on? You were like, "Oh man, this is so interesting, so compelling." Okay? Because what happened was it was clearly defined what everyone's roles were. And I'll give you an example. I was at a conference the other day, owner summit, and for the next home franchises, and there was a gentleman who came on stage, and I will tell you this: I forgot his name. I know that he was from Indiana, I want to say, and the situation is he was telling the story of how he got into real estate and opened an office. So the ending of the story was got into real estate, opened an office. But what was interesting about the entire story was hearing about things that impacted him, the challenges, the internal struggle. So, and I will give you a little bit about that because some of you, I know that I have some that were actually at Owner Summit. So, thank you for, if you're listening to this, whether it's live or on recording. This gentleman was a firefighter. He was a firefighter because his father was a firefighter. Okay. And he wanted to give back to his community. And he always saw it like there was no arc in his story where he was not going to be a firefighter. And it took everything through the fact that he was a firefighter in what they referred to as Rescue One, which he explained is like the SWAT team of firefighters. Okay. So he was the elite of the elite. And he was talking about the impact that one day had on him where he lost his cousin. And he showed pictures of the fire. It was in a church. and his cousin was arm's length from him, and he unfortunately did not survive the fire. He talked about what that was like and how close he was with his cousin, and he shared pictures of him and his cousin when they were in the fire academy. And it was really something that was so impactful because I understood the story, I understood everyone's roles. And then he said, finally, one day, his wife said to him, we should open, you're really good in the community. I think you should go get your real estate license. And he did. And he worked part time as a firefighter still. And then he kept his business and he was growing his business through referrals, through people, working with him. And then he got to a point where he decided to open up his own office. And that was the ending of the story. That was the success. That was the pinnacle. But throughout that whole thing, there was compelling reasons to stay interested in it. And I'm thinking about how things like that, how that kept my interest. And I'm thinking about how I apply that to my business. In my marketing, is the focus on me, or is it on the or is it on the client? You know, and like I said, on page 77 in bold type, for those of you who do not have the book, it said the story is not about us. I mean, honestly, like you could just basically take the book, close it right there, and basically, if you take that and apply it to your business, done, game changer. In my opinion, that's a game changer. Nikita, what do you think? I know you're here with me, so.
Well, food for thought, especially like at this point in the book. I think you're absolutely right. Like the focus is on the client, making them the hero, making them like the center of attention. However, one thing that was like a quick realignment for me was you touched base on it, the internal, external, and the I think it was philosophical.
The
right?
philosophical problems, yeah, it has a problem.
But the first time I listened to that, I was like, all right, whatever. But kind of redigesting it, and I had this idea, even though it wasn't directly mentioned. He gave a couple of examples of, for example, like you could have a movie specifically tailored to a pilot or like a love novel, right? But it
Mhm.
needs to entertain a larger crowd, right? It can't be just focused on that one person because then no one will be in business. So thinking about it from like a real estate perspective, that's the thing with our industry. It's such a long process in the scheme of things where it's not like here's a product, buy it or not, right? It's like it's a 30-day process most of the time, probably more than that most of the time. But the thing is, a lot of times clients will have the tendency to get that feeling of too good to be true. This person's giving so much attention to me, so focused on me and myself. What's the catch? Right. And I think that's where integrating not only that internal factor, but also the external and then also the philosophical. It's like, I'm helping you. Here's exactly why I'm helping you. And here's samples of, people that were in a similar story. And here's why I'm doing it on more ethical level and why I'm trying to kind of do it for the better of the industry.
Well, and I mean, that's really interesting to really focus on the problem and, basically, I think that, so I'm going to give you my interpretation of the problem and how it plays a role in everything. I don't think, because in this book, because it's interesting that you positioned it this way, and I don't recall seeing this. That's why I'm saying I think this is how you're inferring it. So let me just kind of wrap my head around my words right now. You're inferring like, why would you help them? Like, so here's the thing. Now, just let me kind of interject and tell you where I want to go with this, because at no point, like in the examples he gave, like with Yoda and Luke, was it, why are you helping me? I think that if you properly position yourself as the guide, as the person who's going to be helping you get to where you need to be, like the why is something that, again, and it's interesting that you infer that because I never personally saw him, because I'm trying to even think back as I was reading through the book. And also, if you're on the Zoom with me, you could even say too, I didn't hear him say, why should I use them? It's basically like he always positioned it that we are the Yoda, and Yoda never had to sell Luke on anything. Think about that. Like, did Haymitch have to sell Katniss? No, Katniss is on a journey. I need a guide who's going to give me a plan. At no point in that did he say, I have to sell them on something. So I think that if you really position yourself properly in this framework, I think that you actually don't have to explain why. I think that that's becomes apparent. I think that where they would pull back from you, right, where the client might say they have apprehension, is if they felt that there was an ulterior motive, if you didn't properly identify yourself as the guide. So let's talk about that, where they meet the guide. Okay. It's a situation where, they talked a lot about one quote that I had in here was the one about Bill Clinton. I don't know if you recall that. So yeah, I remember.
He felt that people's pain.
So here's the thing. Bill Clinton, so it's on page 79 for those of you who have a hard copy, okay? And it says, when Bill Clinton delivered his now famous line, "I feel your pain," in 1992, he did more than just cinch a victory over George H.W. Bush. He positioned himself as the guide in the American voter's story. So here's the thing. When he did that and he positioned himself properly as the guide in that story for the American voter, no one asked, what's the ulterior motive? Why should I vote for you? He positioned himself properly as the guide. And I think that that's what we need to do in our business is identify. And do you notice how he says, they are the hero, identify the problem, point out the pain, right? Identify yourself as the guide, and then have a plan.
So that makes sense. That's where those three pieces come into play, right? Your message needs to be simple and clear to the sense of where all those three pieces come in alignment.
Yeah. And here's the thing, like I said, I really do like that Nikita brought it up where he was talking about why, because as I said, it was something that, logically, I was like, I never thought about it when I was reading it, but when Nikita said it, and then I was thinking back to the book, I was like, I don't think he ever did say that. And I think that that has to do with really having a focus on, positioning yourself properly as the guide, and he talks about, ways to express empathy. Remember, he said there's two things in here. So on page 78, so that was before the Bill Clinton quote. On page 78, he says, you have to have empathy and authority. Okay. So he then goes into, in page 79, empathetic statements. So here's some empathetic statements, how they start, what they look like. We understand how it feels to. So basically, if you're a real estate agent, be like, we have helped so many families find their dream home. We understand what it is like to go through that process. It's a great tagline. We understand what it's like to do that. That's empathetic, right? Nobody should have to experience this. Okay. Like you, we are frustrated by. Okay. So, and then they talk about the Toyota service centers. Basically their slogan at his local Toyota center, and theirs was, and he uses this as an example of an empathetic statement. We care about your Toyota. That's simple. We care about your Toyota. We care about this journey. We understand what it's like. We understand how it feels to, buy a home. Imagine if you started a buyer presentation with, we understand the pain that you're going through because this is what we do every day. We understand the struggle that you're going through. And also too, something else that I like that was a great empathetic statement that I used to like was, I understand that you're looking at homes on Zillow at 2 a.m. I understand that you're going to be having arguments throughout this whole process. Those are empathetic statements that are going to help you deliver and basically show that you're empathetic. And then the other thing that I'm going to tell you too, because I think that this is super, super, super important, is we need to properly establish being the guide. So one area that I would challenge you on is definitely rereading maybe that chapter. Okay. So this chapter, if you are in a situation where basically you are struggling with, like Nikita said, why would they use me? I think it's all about setting yourself up as the guide, and here's another thing that he says in this chapter. He says, empathy is more than just sentimental slogans. Real empathy means letting the customer know we see them as we see ourselves. Customers look for brands that have something in common with. Okay. Remember, the human brain likes to conserve calories. And so when a customer realizes they have a lot in common with the brand, they fill in all the unknown nuances with trust. So think about that. When I use that, when I basically called them out on, I know you're looking at properties at 2 a.m. and they're like, oh, he knows us. He gets this. Like, yeah, we are. And then basically it allows me to build trust and to kind of grow off of that. So with that being said, I think that there's a couple areas, as I said, that I would challenge you to go back and reread. I think there's a big emphasis as far as what I'm trying to do on repositioning my brand, and making sure that I'm not the center of it. Also, I think that there's a lot of power in basically making sure that we establish ourselves as the guide properly. And that's really all I have for this first half of the book. As I said, I would challenge you before moving on to do those two things, and think about how that applies. And basically, when we wrap up later, I'd love to see how, hey, here's how I thought of applying this to my business, because I think there's a lot of opportunities, as I said, within real estate, also within other industries for sure. But Cheryl, I know you were asking questions before. Nikita, do you have anything else that you want to say or mention?
Hi, Stu, it's Cheryl. I
Mhm.
guess, I guess life, if you're going to look at it on a philosophical letter, uh, um, it's like you're looking at risk and reward. And so I think we as the guides are going to answer the questions as to what the customer or client, you know, how much risk and what kind of reward while
Yeah.
we're guiding them.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, here's the situation, and Cheryl, thank you for chiming in. Um, I think there's a lot of opportunities here to really, you know, uh, of course, hey, look, we're looking to apply this to our business, to that, but also too, if we look at the relationships that we have, are they centered around us or are they centered around, uh, around someone else? It's a situation where, I think that anytime you're potentially looking at a solution, I think you should be looking towards, building a story brand and how you could potentially reframe things and kind of restructure it where, maybe you do fit in better as the guide for this situation. It's not your journey. I'm sure there are things that, hey, look, my wife needs to do all by herself. She has to take a journey, to find herself something like, I'll tell you this, you always fight about, cars, and when she's buying a car, that's a perfect example of a real life situation, where you're in a relationship. And guess what? I have tried to make myself the hero of the story and basically have it centered around, my input and what I think is going to be best and everything. When really, honestly, it's about my wife, her finding a car and, what she likes, what she doesn't like. And basically, yeah, I mean, I could see how you could apply it to life. I think that the one thing that you can take and apply to a lot of other aspects of your life, okay, if you're not just taking the framework, because like I said, it's really unique in the fact that we're trying to sell a service, a product, or something, and that's really where we're leveraging this, right? But one thing that I could tell you that I can take away and I can apply to many other aspects of my life is right on the front page of the book. Clarify your message so customers will listen. I think if you clarify your messages in communication, in your business, in your personal life, I think you'll find a lot of success. So I think that's something that I could take away that I could apply to, real life. But Nikita, do you have anything?
No, I think you're down on the head. I mean, as long as your true intent, like if you can flat out just say, hey, my intent is this, and someone's willing to buy it, number one, if you have, intent that actually aligns with the client's perspective, it's always going to work out. But if you're trying to like beat around the bush, trying to again focus on your best interest rather than someone else's, you're realistically, even though you might think yourself as the guide, you're probably going to end up being the villain in that story. So
Yeah. I mean, look, listen, I think that that is definitely 100% true. So look, listen, I think that we had a lot of great things that we talked about today. We hit on some of the stuff that I really wanted to focus on, My challenge to you is going to be to reread the guide section, because I think that out of all of those, that is the biggest. Because I think that's really where we start to position ourselves, where it's no brainer, where we are the Yoda to the Luke Skywalker. No one, and Luke didn't say, well, wait a second, why should I work with you? It's a no brainer. It was a no brainer. Position himself properly, and never at any point was there any kind of trepidation or doubt. And basically, because Yoda had empathy and he spoke from authority. Empathy and authority, empathy and authority. I think that, and that's such a simple message too. But listen, I will get a recording out to everybody who was here live with me. For those of you who are watching the recording, if you do want to check out what our current book is, no matter what time you're actually listening to this, okay, stewsbookclub.com, right in the lower left-hand corner of that slide. As I said, I have a full review of all my notes, all the things that I was really impressed about as far as this book is concerned. And as I said, I hope that you are enjoying this. And I will see everyone in 2 weeks. We'll be wrapping up the book, and we'll do the same thing. And if you do have any friends, any real estate agents that you think this might benefit, tell them to go to Stu's Book Club. Tell them to jump on for next month, because we're going to be doing the Go Giver. And I look forward to seeing everyone then. Have a great one, everybody. I will see you real soon.